Hey, so today I'm going to be interviewing Sun Yuan, the founder of the mass email service SimpleLogin.io. In a previous video on why you should use a different email address for every account, we showcased Anonymity and how you can use it to secure your online privacy and personal cybersecurity. SimpleLogin is an alternative service that you can use as well. And this time, we have the honor of speaking with the founder himself. Sun, so glad to have you on the show.
Hey.
So let's just get right into it. In all transparency, I've never used SimpleLogin before. For my personal use, I kind of got started off with a lot of these different forwarding services in the past. Maybe walk me through setting it up.
Yeah.
Okay, so Sun, tell me, what do I need to do?
Yeah, so actually there's different ways of using SimpleLogin. I think the most simple one is to use SimpleLogin browser extension. Can you go to simplelogin.io?
Okay, so I'm on simplelogin.io. Get SimpleLogin for Firefox using the plugin?
Yeah.
So for convenience sake, I already created an account ready to go. But if I were to create a new account, we would just put our email and password there, correct?
Yeah.
All right, so let's get started. I already have an account that I created. What software stack do you use to develop the web app?
So SimpleLogin is based on Python.
Gotcha. So what is this step all about?
SimpleLogin will display a small icon on every email field, so you can quickly create a new email alias. In order to do that, SimpleLogin needs to have a permission. So this permission is not obligatory. You don't have to allow SimpleLogin to have this permission in order to use SimpleLogin. If you don't allow this permission, then you won't have the small icon display on the email fields, but you can still create new alias by right-clicking on the website.
Awesome. So in this case, I'm gonna just approve. So now all we have to do is click this icon.
Yeah, you can also create a new alias by opening this add-on.
Okay, so let me create this alias. Let's go sign up for a Reddit account. From name should be maybe the name if I'm gonna respond to an email, is that correct? Like the name to display?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I'll call it Groucho Marx. Save and back. So now we have a reddit.com email registered. So if I go to Reddit and I click sign up, so as you can see, we have a SimpleLogin email here, the icon. So if I click on that, it will automatically populate.
Yeah.
How is it able to detect that email for this site?
So actually what happens behind the scene is SimpleLogin scans the website and finds the input element, and it will add the small icon in this element so we can click on it.
So this generated a new email for me based off of the URL. If I wanted to use the one that I generated myself manually, I would have to open this, click to copy, and then put it in there.
Yeah,
I see. So let's go ahead and just continue with the new one it generated. For the username,
I think you can click on the right. So Reddit propose some option for the username.
Okay, I'll click on a username there to populate that. Password, let me generate whatever that password is. Everybody can see that. Super strong. I like how you use HCAPTCHA for SimpleLogin rather than reCAPTCHA, because reCAPTCHA has gotten very annoying over the years.
Yeah, I hate the reCAPTCHA. It's slow, it's hard to get right, and it's unpredictable. Like sometimes they ask for doing the CAPTCHA, like for no reason at all, and that's why I look for an alternative, and HCAPTCHA seems to be better. It's also more privacy friendly.
Okay, so now I'm signed up. If I want to go to the SimpleLogin website, you also have a web portal for me to manage these emails, right?
So actually we have different versions of SimpleLogin, on the web, via the extension on mobile application. And the web version is actually the most complete version. That's why you can find advanced options like custom domain, adding new mailboxes, directories, or enabling YubiKey.
So you can authenticate with a security key.
Yeah.
Like the U2F FIDO standard.
Yeah.
So pretty straightforward. Any particular settings or tabs you wanted to go over or highlight?
Yeah, I would suggest going to settings and at least enable multi-factor authentication because it's always more secure.
So I'm not going to set that up right now, but you have the code, or even better is using a security key.
Yeah, this one is even better.
Okay. Can you talk about the domains?
So by default, when creating a new alias, we'll use Symbologin domains. So you have like a bunch of domains that Symbologin offers, but you can also create alias with your own domain. So let's say if you own a domain called Ricky.com, you can create alias like contact@ricky.com or hi@ricky.com. So you don't have any limit when creating new aliases.
So in terms of mailboxes, you had mentioned earlier, we can create multiple mailboxes to set for forwarding these emails to. So you can have multiple people receive a copy of the messages.
Yeah. And actually that's how we manage emails in our company as well. So for each team member, they have their own mailbox. And when creating a new alias, we can choose the team member who will receive emails for this alias. So we can create, for example, iOS, a Symbologin.io, which is forwarded to the iOS guy. Another one, support Symbologin.io, and all emails sent to this address will be forwarded to the support person.
So we have some how to use instructions there. For the aliases, can I create a custom alias rather than a randomly generated one?
Yeah, you have two ways of creating new alias. You can create a custom alias, where you can customize the alias depending on whether you have your own domain or not. If you don't have your own domain, there's always a random string added to the alias, to avoid people clicking all the nice aliases. But if you have your own domain, then there's no random bit and you can name the alias the way you want.
Got it. And so if you use a custom domain, you also avoid maybe these domains being blocked by the sign up provider.
Yeah.
But at the expense of being more unique, because if everyone's using these ones, you get some extra privacy benefit.
Exactly.
Yeah, so Sun, that was really cool. Thank you for the walkthrough. You can look into using Simple Login for some of my accounts as well. When did you start Simple Login and why did you build it?
Yeah, so back in 2019, I watched the Snowden movie and I became more conscious about protecting my online privacy. And I see that we usually use the same email address everywhere. So email address is like our online identity. So if we use a single online identity on all websites, we can be tracked easily on the internet. And that's why I create Symbologin with the goal of helping users to create a different identity for every service, for every website.
Let's get into some of your personal recommendations for cybersecurity in general. What are some things you do personally to stay secure?
Yes, actually for protecting my security. So the first thing I recommend is to use a password manager so that you can create a different password for every website because it helps you to create a different password very easily. And it also helps you to remember the username and password you use for each website. So you don't have to, to remember yourself. Symlogin is rather for protecting your privacy and not directly security. But actually, when you have your privacy protected, your security will be improved as well. An example is when you have different identities for each website, then it's hard to know about your online behavior, and it's really hard to create a phishing attack, for example. And actually, phishing attack is the most dangerous, I would say, hacking technique for companies, for corporates.
Got it. So back in the day, privacy and security, they may have been two separate things that were kind of related, but as we're becoming more digitally intertwined, those two things are slowly coming together. So in order to maintain a strong security, you also have to maintain a very strong privacy as well. And be able to compartmentalize all those email addresses is a really good way to help you do that, because as we all know, companies suffer data breaches all the time, and your email is going to get out there eventually.
Yeah, exactly. And if you want to check whether the emails has been lost, you can use a service called FIBinPon. And most of the time, you will see that the emails is already lost to a spammer. And the second thing, I think the most important thing about security is to be careful. Like, do not click on any links that you receive. So when you receive something that you don't expect, do not open any files or run any script that you copy from the internet. So for my parents, what I recommend is to talk to them about security risks so that they know that there are a lot of risks on the internet, and we have to be cautious when we talk with someone over the internet because we don't see that person, and that person can be anyone, can be a bad guy who try to steal our information or our credit card. And I also ask them to basically to be cautious. Like whenever they receive an email that seems a bit strange, don't click on it. Like right click on the link, copy the link somewhere, and most of the time they will see that the links are not pointing to the website that they claim to be.
Awesome. So one huge concern is children who are studying or going to school from home, and they're online now, especially with the kids who are just growing up with iPhones and iPads in the crib. Do you see Simple Login as maybe a tool that parents could use to help their kids stay secure online until they've grown and developed the maturity to kind of protect themselves?
Yeah. So actually, Simple Login is used by a lot of students. The premium plan is free for students, and I think it's a good idea to start protecting our online privacy as soon as possible. So why not talk about some basic measures to protect our online privacy to our children so they can start be more cautious. Yeah, it's possible you can have multiple, we call that mailboxes in Simple Login. So one for yourself, and you can set maybe another one for your child. So any email that is sent to the alias will be forwarded to your email and to your child mailbox.
So there's also a lot of people who have a defeatist mentality, and they say, oh no, my information's already out there, and I just can't do anything about it. What is your response to those people?
Yes, actually, it's like the most frequent arguments that people give when they talk about privacy. It's very similar to saying, I don't have to protect my privacy if I have nothing to hide. And that's actually wrong, because privacy is a right. It's like, free speech. You have the right to privacy by default. And if you don't protect your privacy, some bad person can use your data to make you do things that they want. And obviously, we want to be in control. We don't want to be told to do things by someone else. And the last thing is, if people don't care about their privacy, they just give me, their Facebook account or their bank account because they have nothing to hide, right? So why not giving me the credentials? And that's how I try to convince people to be more conscious about privacy.
So how is Simple Login different from a lot of the other burner email address services out there?
Simple Logins use a concept called email alias. And email alias is different than the burner email address. When an email is sent to an email alias, the email is forwarded to your personal mailbox. Whereas with a burner address, the burner address will disappear after a short period of time, and email alias exists forever, just like a normal email address, until you disable them or delete.
So the difference between Simple Login and many other mass email address services is that Simple Login gives you actual aliases, which you can send and receive. They're tied to your account, whereas the other services, they are kind of just throwaways that they might be recycled or disappear. So if you sign up for anything, you might not know if they're still going to be around, as I understand. Can you talk us through some of the most requested features for Simple Login and maybe some of the ones you guys have implemented and are really proud of?
Yes, actually, we have a lot of requests from users because we have an open roadmap that anyone can go and vote on to the features that they want to see happen in Simple Login. And the features that gets a lot of requests was to support PGP encryptions. If you have a PGP email address, you can upload your PGP public key into Simple Login. Simple Login will encrypt the email with your public key so that the email stays encrypted, and even your emails provider cannot read your email. So this feature is very tricky to implement because PGP support is still quite sparse, even for Python. In order to use PGP, we pipe the input and the output to the GPG binary. So GPG is an implementation of PGP. Yeah, so because we do the piping, it's not really reliable. Sometimes it can fail. Sometimes we can have errors that we cannot catch. And that's why for PGP, we need to have a fallback in case like the default PGP encryption doesn't work. Yeah, so let's say you are using Gmail and you know that Google can read your emails, right? They can analyze your emails in order to send you personalized advertisements. But if you enable PGP in your Gmail, which is quite easy with some Chrome or Firefox extension, emails can only be read by you. And Google, if somehow Google lose this, a bad guy cannot decrypt the email. So only you can read your emails.
Got it. So when you enabled PGP, all of the emails that get forwarded to your main inbox are actually encrypted. So you won't be able to read them unless you have a way to just natively decrypt it inside of that client, or you download it and decrypt it manually.
Exactly. Yeah, you can read it only if you have the private key. And you can either read the emails inside your browser. If you install some PGP browser extension, or if you download the emails locally via an email client like Thunderbird or the Mac Mail application, you can enable PGP locally.
Do you see any spammers or people abusing your service just by threat actors? Because with any service or utility, you can use it for good or bad. It's all the intention. What are you doing about it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So for any email service, we got a lot of attacks from spam bots, people who want to send spams from your email server so that, they can send spam to a lot of people. And you have to be careful to block these attacks. You also have people who try to use your service, so they sign up for your service and they try to send emails, spam emails from your service to other people. And in order to deal with this kind of abuse, we have different layers of security. We also have some automatic email scanning to avoid spams getting out of Simple Login. So we use an open source software called Spam Assassin to scan, for spams. And we also set up a lot of filters in Postfix. So Postfix is a popular email sending program We set up a lot of filters in Postfix to reject all emails that look suspicious.
Can you talk about a little bit about your background and how you came about to become a software engineer?
I came from Vietnam. So back in high school, I studied a lot of mathematics. And when I moved to France to start my university, I picked computer science because I'm very interested in playing around with computers. So I play around with different Linux distributions. I love typing in the terminal, doing some hacky things. So I think it's quite obvious for me to become a software engineer. I worked on several different roles in software development. So right after school, I worked as a backend engineer in an advertising company. So that doesn't suit me well. So I left the company. Advertising is very challenging in terms of technology because we have like a lot of data to deal with, and the response time is very small. You have to stay under 100 milliseconds in order to win a place to show your ad. However, you learn a lot about privacy as well when you work for an advertising company. You know that it's quite easy to track users. You just use an iframe on a website and then you can track their behavior. You can know what they are seeing. You can buy data from other companies, or you can create an SDK and the SDK will send back to you the data. The user see what the SDK is integrated in a mobile application. And after that, I only work for startups. I work as architect, as DevOps, and after that, moving a bit towards a lead developer, project manager, and then a human manager.
Where do you feel like you got the most development and learning? Was it in school or working and coding and trying things out on your own?
Yeah, I learned a lot when creating a product from scratch because in school we don't practice enough. And in the big companies, most of the time we do a lot of maintenance and we try to add, small features, incremental features. But when you work on a product from scratch, you have to learn a lot. You have to learn about writing the backend, maintaining the database, protecting the server against attacks, etc. You learn much more when working on a project from the beginning. There's a lot of things to consider. So first of all, you need to create an API on top of the tool to expose data so that a client can use. And after that, you have to think about whether you want your tool to be used by somebody else. In this case, you might need to add a bit of authentication to your web application. Depending on the tool, you also need to think about what libraries that you have to use. For example, if your tool provides a lot of graphics of charts, for example, then you might need to look at some JavaScript libraries for displaying charts inside the browsers. On the backend side, you have a lot of choice because there's a lot of language that you can use to do the backend. You can use Java, Python, Ruby, etc. On the front-end side, it's a bit easier because you just need to learn HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. But then in JavaScript, you have a lot of frameworks like React, Vue, Angular that you don't have to learn in order to do front-end. Actually, it's even better that you first create the front-end without using any framework, and little by little, a little bit of maybe React to add some new features. And by doing that, you will learn much more about the front end.
So your path towards becoming a web app developer was a little bit formal academic training, but you realize that didn't really expose you to all of the universe of what you needed to actually become very proficient. So how do you go from 1 to maybe where you are now, like a 10?
Yeah, I don't think I'm at 10 right now, maybe 5 or 6. But I think like for me, the way to learn is to try different projects. So I work on a lot of different side projects or even startups, ranging from web application to mobile application to machine learning. And by doing that, I learned a lot of things about software development.
So as I understand, you're in France, Paris specifically. What's the tech and startup scene there like, or cybersecurity world?
Paris is actually a startup hub in Europe, along with London and Berlin. So there's a lot of startups that come from Paris. And before COVID, there were a lot of meetups, conferences about how to start your startup, how to raise funds. And actually, the government also give a lot of help to startups. However, in terms of security startup, I don't think there's a lot of startup in France who focus on security.
What are some things you do apart from tech stuff and simple login? I understand that this is a startup and your time is mostly spent on it, but maybe some hobbies or things you do on the side?
Yeah, I love to travel. So actually, after quitting my previous job to work on Simulogin, with my wife, we kind of travel around the world before COVID. Now with the COVID, it becomes a little bit more difficult to travel. So now most of the time, I either watch football or badminton games. And if the lockdown is lift off in France, then I go to the gym to play badminton.
Is Paris locked down over there right now? I saw like pictures of like massive traffic jams of people just leaving.
So it's the second lockdown. The first one finished in May, I think. But after that, they realized that the number of cases doesn't stop to decrease. So they decided to start a second lockdown.
Wow. Hope everything is going well there. It's not like as tech guys, you need to go outside every night once in a while, but not that often. So I'm sure you're doing fine.
Yeah.
So Sun, thanks so much for coming on our show and sharing with us your project, Simple Login. I think it's a fantastic tool and the work that you and your team are doing. And thanks so much for coming on, and hope to see you soon.
Yeah, big pleasure.